lights because this is going to be a big dose of heresy here. And unfortunately, I don't have the getaway that I was hoping for. So basically, what I want to share here is, look, I'm a 5'1". I've got 8 fifth lines, guilt, motivation, and I'm on the left angle cross of demands. So, it's about demanding that things improve, things change. And I would say that after this 7-year cycle, I've never felt like such a heretic as I do now, which is totally correct. And it leaves me in a place of reevaluating a lot of things about human design. And I would say that I really don't take issue with anything Ross said. I'm not here to say that he's wrong about anything. I do think that there's a lot of misunderstandings in the community that are being perpetuated because of a lack of investigation, because dogma is trumping, inner investigation, which would really set things straight. And I meet a lot of people who have had a reading and they need another reading. I talk to a lot of people who are fundamentally confused on what it is to enter the experiment, what it is to follow strategy and authority. And I think it blows my mind that so many senior people, people that are really prevalent on Facebook or a part of IHDS, have conflicting views about fundamentals. So I want to talk about some of those things in the spirit of creating some clarity and helping us really serve others effectively. I'm a practical person. I want to get results. I want people to understand what I'm saying. I want them to hear me clearly. I want them to know what to do with that reading. I want them to know how to find their inner authority from the reading. I want them to be able to track that stuff in their body and not just get lost in their head. So with that said, let's talk about a few fundamentals. Number one, what really makes a decision correct? I hear so many different things. And I don't necessarily want to get down the rabbit hole of every authority and nuance, but at a high level, I often hear people say something like this: "Oh, my body just did it, therefore it's correct." Well, I think that there's a certain time and a place for that. For example, the mundane example that I've been giving people is, there was a big storm, there was all this bramble in my yard, it looked terrible, I wanted to take care of it, but I didn't have the energy. So one day I just found myself doing it. Okay, my body just did it. Was nothing that needed to be premeditated. But for those bigger life decisions, that doesn't really make sense. Your body just doesn't, relocate to another state, just get in a relationship, start a new job. So what's the difference? And I think that the difference is really witnessing your body making the decision. It's important to be the passenger in that moment. And I also hear things like, if you feel as though you're making a choice, you're in your mind, you're in your not self. It sounded really profound at first, except when I actually introspect from the perspective that we are locked into. We're just a passenger. We're an avatar for, the personality is an avatar for the passenger, right? So we think we are. We're looking through this lens. We don't see the totality of who we are, when the design and the personality come together. So from that limited lens, it looks like we have free will because we don't have the whole picture. And it gets back to this basic tenet that they always, share in these institutional educational programs about the road and tunnel metaphor, okay? So the road and tunnel metaphor, the black or the personality is a road. Imagine bird's eye view, you're looking down, you can see the cars going back and forth, okay? That's the personality. Design is a tunnel. You look down, you just see a tunnel. You don't know what's in there. You just see what's coming out. You see the effect of your unconscious. What I'm pointing at here is that it's perfectly appropriate and really unavoidable that when you're not in one of those small decisions that your body can just make, like, I'm going to grab a sandwich, when you're in a bigger decision, you have to come to a place where, at the level of experience, it seems as though you're making a choice. Phenomenologically, just what it looks like in your experience, there is a sense of self that is choosing to trust the body's energy rather than the mental trip. So I want to clarify, because this is out there, that if you feel like you're making a choice, that doesn't mean you're in your mind, doesn't mean you're in your not self. There is some sense of self that the mind imagines other possibilities. They're not really real. And then there's an energy showing up in your body that you have to surrender to. So what I'm saying is that's the right place to be. If you've gone inward and you found that, that's the right place to be. But I think the correct decisions are here to be watched and surrendered to. It isn't decision making, it's decision watching. But the big ones do need to be watched. Another fundamental confusion that I'm seeing is a lot of people are confusing strategy and authority. And so particularly with projectors, I'm seeing a lot of misinformation about what it is to wait for the invitation. You're not here to wait to be invited to live your life. It doesn't make any sense. You don't need an invitation to leave an abusive relationship. Now, let me clarify something. You don't get to just leave it just because your mind wants to leave it either. There's a nuance there about trusting that inner authority, about the timing on that. Generators have the same, dilemma. I've been in jobs before where I was like, I know it's not this, but I haven't seen anything else I can respond to. The exit sign hasn't showed up. I don't have another path that's emerged. So on one level, it's just checking in, is this right or is this not? Which is actually more than just your authority. It's being in touch with your body. It's having somatic awareness. And there's a whole gap there in human design. There's all kinds of information you're getting that has been well mapped out by, Tibetan yogis, among other traditions. And, you talk to one of these masters and they'll tell you that there's more information in their toe than in their mind. And that's not hyperbole. That's what they will tell you. So we need to be literate and in touch with all of that, because that might be the thing that says to you, I'm not in the right place, I'm not with the right people, this isn't serving me, this isn't good for me. Then you're waiting for something to extract you out of the situation. But you don't need someone who's going to swoop in and rescue you out of an abusive relationship. Doesn't make any sense. And it's really quite toxic and damaging. And you see, that's a confusion of strategy and authority. The authority is there, you have agency, your body's always talking to you. The strategy is to wait for the invitation in terms of, don't share what you see as a projector with your incredibly deep perception with someone that hasn't asked for it, because that's uncomfortable. Period. In the same vein as what I just said, there are a lot of people, that come to mind that are quite senior teachers that while I can appreciate the radicalness of their example and of their experiment, they're not acknowledging the richness of the interior landscape. And I think us solar plexus binary people really need to hear that, because there is an assumption that anything that isn't your authority, like oh, you're not getting a sacral response, everything else is mine. It's not true. It's not true. There's all kinds of somatic information. There's also all kinds of inexplicable intuitive information that is showing up. Now, I'm not saying you're supposed to act on that, but it's information. And somehow the things that we become aware of, somehow what we learn, informs what the brain and the body do. So you have to acknowledge it. You have to include that in your life experience. And I think that we need examples to help us get more in our body and develop more awareness beyond just the authority.
So seen right now. Feeling so seen.
It's hard, you know, and we were in the solar plexus binary group together, and I think that we're getting so much information that has no outlet. You know, and that's why I could tell even with the Facebook group I set up, there was like this hunger to talk about it, to acknowledge it, you know, and to meet people who are sharing that same experience. Continuing on about the body, I think human design supersedes almost everything. But I think that there's a deeper layer that we need to contend with before we can get people in strategy and authority. And that's trauma. It's trauma. And it doesn't mean that human design teachers need to be trauma teachers, because everyone's not meant for everything. But here's what I think it does mean to be a responsible human design teacher. If you think someone has trauma, have someone in your network you can refer them to. That's all. And I think with touch or feeling cognition, we are attuned to people at a subtle level where we can track how their nervous system is showing up. We're tuning into those micro movements and gestures that indicate to us, even precognitively, we just get a sense of where someone's at. I know who has trauma. And if I feel like someone's got trauma, I have a person I'm going to refer them to. I also happen to respond to do trauma training that's starting this month. But until I feel I have my foundation as a 5-1, until I am totally competent in that, that's not my business. But we need to get that person help. If they don't resolve the trauma, if their nervous system isn't settled, if it's always in fight or flight mode or freeze mode, then awareness can't settle in the body, and they can't hear their inner authority. Just can't. It's a big deal. It's sorely missing. It's why a lot of people are in the experiment for a hell of a long time before they make any headway. We can't dismiss all other modalities. We need to take a critical lens to some, but we can't dismiss all other modalities. The reading model is limited. You know, readings have their place. They can be a catalyst. I believe it's the exception, not the rule, that is going to transform by reading human design PDFs, you know, audios from Raw, and they get an occasional reading. I think most people need a little help to get unstuck in the deconditioning process from time to time.
When this is talked about sometimes in the community, it's like, well, those are 7-7
It's gaslit.
Those are seven-centered modalities. Those are seven-centered.
Yes. Here's the nuance. I started my human design journey with someone who is weaving together psychotherapy and human design. And I'll tell you what, it didn't work. When you include somatic therapy, and it's not about the narrative and the stories, see, somatic therapy uses the story as a device to reveal where your body is at, and then you use what you're seeing as a signpost for what needs to be met and felt, presenced. But it isn't about the story. But it's, oh, every time your mom comes up, I see that you shut down in some way. We need to lean into that. It isn't about belaboring the story about your mom, because it's all impersonal, and she was a witness to her own biochemistry, and no choice is a real thing.
I had a thought. Sorry, I'm behind you, so I can't get your attention without making a sound. You know, when we talk about these modalities, they're just tools, right? Mm-hmm. And if you use a tool as a seven-centered being, you're going to create a seven-centered thing. But
yes.
If you use a tool as a nine-centered being, you're going to make a nine-centered thing, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
It's how you relate with it. Exactly. Anytime you're coming at it strategically, you know, you're coming from survival mode, you're going to get that seven-centered, you know, experience. You're totally right. I saw on Facebook the other day, someone was saying, well, is acupuncture and cupping and I don't know, whatever other alternative thing, they're just seven-centered things, right? I'm like, absolutely not.
Yeah.
Why? You know, so there's such a prejudice that has kind of built up, such an arrogance. You know, it's about transcending and including, you know, is a phrase that I like from the integral community. But, you know, here's the thing. Without the map, without the understanding of the mechanics, if you're purely in the psychotherapy model, it's almost impossible not to coach against someone's nature from a place of homogenized beliefs and homogenized norms and morality. And that's what happened to me from someone that is fairly famous in human design. She was still doing that. She was coaching against my nature. But we need to extract what's, just like human design extracts aspects of astrology and the I Ching, Kabbalah, so on and so forth, and they're incorporated in a new way. There's wisdom there to be incorporated, to be repackaged.
Can I also say one other thing? I think that there's so much differentiation in human design that sometimes people forget that their experience isn't the experience.
Yeah.
You know, I feel like people go, I mean, I did that. I was like, the spleen does this, and I'm like, oh, wait, no, that's just what my spleen does. There's all these other activations that I don't have. It does other things. I think people sometimes forget that there can be somebody that is absolutely correct that just may be on a different fractal. Doesn't mean that they're not self, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. They're just different. Or somebody can have an experience, I'm a third line. What's correct for me is often doing the wrong thing. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Like, there's just so much differentiation, and I think people forget.
Yeah.
Yeah. And they homogenize human design.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it has to be more than transmitting information. You know, we need to be, it's a transmission that goes deep. You can hear when someone's speaking from an embodied place versus their head. You know, it's there to be seen if you can see it. Even on Facebook, you know, because the person I now send clients to that have trauma that needs to be sorted out, he's a projector that I recognized on Facebook. Purely from that text, I could feel he was speaking from an incredibly deep place because of the way he was holding it and because of the nuance. And I think that this information, you know, human design is a candy store for the mind, and it is so easy to just exacerbate arrogance. And look, you know, again, not throwing stones at Ra because, oh my God, I mean, this is beyond amazing what he did. but he's limited, as we all are. That's what we're embracing here. And he wasn't designed to have what he called bedside manner. But many people need nurturing. They need some support, you know, and not just tribal people, you know. And so what often happens in spiritual communities, if we can call this that, is that the guru, the leader, sets a tone, and they establish unwittingly a shadow that everyone lives in. Because to confront the limitations of the leader, it's not something that's welcome. You know, what's human design versus what's Ra's human design? And I think that some of Ra's hyperbole and absolutism, lack of bedside manner, has become adopted by his followers as if that's correct.
It'd be more shocking to sway people at the very beginning. Right? Now it's sort of like there are more people, and so it doesn't have to have that same.
Right.
Yeah. Yesterday, I guess, or maybe the day before, I don't remember. It's all blending. But Jonah was doing the lock and key. He's talking about the lock and key stuff. So like, what, you know, how we were getting things, you know, in the past, and then what we're going to be doing after 2027. And it was interesting to hear him describe basically Ra's understanding of the different gates and whatever, and then have Brandy describe it, and it's like the same thing, just a different kind of understanding of that energy and how that flow was different. And I was like, oh yeah, if you think about it, all along there hasn't been just one way that everybody is. So of course into the future there's also going to be a complex ways that people are going to be, and it's going to be in this range of like Ra to, you know, to Richard Rudd, you know, like it's just how it's going to be.
Right.
Yeah. And I can vibrate with both of them at any given time, depending on what's going on with me.
Yeah, and look, Ra admitted he underestimated what it takes to decondition people. He said, I thought when I told generators to wait, they were all going to wake up. You know? He didn't know what it was like to work with people, you know? And when he started his rave psychology program, I mean, it crashed and burned miserably because he didn't know how to train people on how to have that kind of bedside manner and work with people. So only people that kind of came to this knowledge with that background have really brought that bedside manner. And I think, you know, honestly, while I agree that it's the simple stuff that makes the difference, you know, what's your type, what's your authority, what's your profile, what's your definition, what are your main not-self themes. That's well over 80% of it. But I do think that for someone to really transform with this knowledge, they have to be interested to look at that graph repeatedly. And that's why I see this as a long-term thing. I feel like maybe the foundation reading needs to be deconstructed. It's kind of absurd to me that you go through any of these educational institutions. Most of what they're doing is they're teaching you how to produce a particular product in a very particular way. Now, is there a clearer, more comprehensive, without being overwhelming way to produce a reading? Yeah, absolutely. Do I think that they are nitpicking and a little bit stuck on exactly how you format that? Abso-fucking-lutely. I mean, what it comes down to is what always matters. That's what should be in a foundation reading. What always matters. You can't not include certain things. But I question the pace at which you introduce it. Because with my professional career, my experience in design, I'm very sensitive to communication, clarity, and how much people can absorb at a time. A foundation reading is it's a bomb, you know? It's so much. And people tend to err on the side of too much information for one reason or another. And I don't think it serves the client. If they walk out and they have 1 or 2 really important things to do, that's better than giving them 70 tidbits that aren't clear and aren't actionable and they don't even remember. So what if it was a process? What if it's, hey, this week we talk about type and strategy. Next week we talk about authority. Then we talk about your definition. What if you stagger it out? I'm just creating possibilities for the different ways to work with people, because at the end of the day, it's about the practical result as far as I'm concerned. They have to, if that body graph is a touchstone for them regularly, they're getting lost and they can look at that and they have that prompt, right? It's supposed to be a prompt. Am I trying to hurry up to be free of the pressure? Am I trying to be certain? Am I trying to prove my worth? Am I avoiding confrontation and truth? They need those prompts. They need the insights it can deliver. You know, wherever they're at, they'll get the information they need if they have some literacy with the chart. That to me is essential. It's really how to help them use the chart long term, give them support long term, stagger out the information in a way that's digestible. And the whole no choice thing, which can be such a cop-out. I mean, look, I get it in that, you know, I've been in this long enough that I see that I am the witness of this experience. And I only know when I know. I only feel what I feel, you know. I get caught up and try to, you know, hurry to get free of the pressure. I can't just stop it because I know about it, but I can watch it. And it does change. It is not dominating my life the way that it used to. So I totally get the passenger consciousness, no choice aspect. But we have to be careful that we're not just keeping people stuck and shutting down their possibilities and limiting them in a way that isn't natural.
Yeah, I could see how no choice would actually be something that would maybe be later in the experiment than
Right.
in the beginning, right? Because in the beginning, the mind is going to jump on and go, oh, don't have a choice.
Right.
Just going to, you know. But once you've deconditioned more, I can see how that would be more appropriate. Okay, I was about to give my little heretic for a second. The groups are so mixed with like people that don't, like, they don't even know anything yet. They're brand new. They found human design and they entered a group.
Yeah.
To people that have been in this forever. And it's hard. Like, I've been on this shtick recently. Like, I really want a space where I can, you know, where we can just talk about more advanced things without getting 50 million. What's that? What does that mean? You know, where do you find that in your chart? Where do I find tone in this chart that has my body graph? And I'm like, oh God.
They don't even know not to ask you that yet.
Yeah, I know. Exactly.
Well, I know. They've been in the experiment
Thank
for 45
you.
minutes and they're looking at their tone.
Right?
Speaking from a quad right, I need help with that. Whether
Yeah.
I get it, you know, like I don't focus on that. I don't want to like sit and study what does this mean, and everyone uses different words for the same thing, and
Yeah.
it's really confusing. But I usually pick up things really fast. I do have all the raws. I got the stick from Jonah, so I can listen to the 40 hours of him talking. So I'm excited.
I think the thing for me is not that I don't want people to ask questions. Like, I want people to ask. I just want to be able to have a space where we can talk about stuff and not confuse people and not throw people that are new into stuff that they're not ready for, is what I was getting at. You know what I mean?
Totally. I've been feeling
I'm
creating
not
that.
Anti-beginner. God.
I've been
I'm
feeling
always a
creating that
beginner.
for a while, and maybe this is a catalyst for it, but like, you know, who are the people that are really sincerely in the experiment?
Yeah.
There's no like, how long have you been in it? 2 years, 3 years? It's not about that. It's, are
Yeah.
you sincerely in the experiment? You know?
Yeah.
I think we're all craving that. That's why also it's a big pull to be here, right? It's to connect with other people, living their design. My experience at this conference is that I find there's so much levity, really. You know, there's a real lightness. You know, not self is always with us. It's not to be condemned. It's to be loved and embraced and accepted. I feel like it's pretty well contained here, you know? And I think that's testament to the fact that, you know, there's a lot of people here really living their design, you know?
Yeah, I've never felt so much peace in such a huge group before because I don't feel any push and pull to be anything other than who I am, and I feel seen and acknowledged. You know what I mean? Like people, I can say I'm a 1-3 emotional manifestor. People are like, okay, I get you, and you know what I mean, and they know I don't have to.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I don't have
Yeah.
to explain anything. And, you know, there's so much peace here, and I know I'm not the only one. I'm just saying, I'm just using
Yeah.
myself as an example. This space is incredible.
Yeah, it's been very touching. I've definitely felt that too.
I've never felt success this big.
Mm.
It feels so cool.
Mm.
Like, I have to say big because it's just like
Yeah.
expansive.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. There's two other things I wanted to cover, and one is, you know, we tend to get into this space of judging whether what we have done is correct or not correct, and I think it's problematic. You know, did I get a response? And then you chop up your life experience. You're like, well, this happened, and then I got a response, and now I'm going to evaluate that. That's part of the trap too. You know, if something's correct or incorrect, let it show up in your awareness, or don't chase it. And sometimes it does. Sometimes you're like, oh my God, that was just so wrong. Okay, great. But if you have to go looking for it, you know, I think you can easily fall into a mental hole there. You know, you're judging your experience. You don't really know. I mean, as Mike said the other day, there's a, you know, transliteration between the mind and body. The mind doesn't really get what the body's doing. We can witness it. We have vocabulary for it, but there's what it is in and of itself and how it operates is not something the mind can understand on the outside. And finally, I think as a fifth line, but certainly relevant to other lines, you know, I'm a transpersonal profile, and I'm here to serve people. You know, I have karmic debts, and so what I encounter in the community is a lot of apathy and a lot of this attitude of, well, I'm going to sit back and watch the world burn. If you're not chock full of sickness, that's not correct for you. You know, the sixth line rightly can step back and not get involved, but you know, for a fifth line, you know, I am here to provide practical solutions to save people. Not when my mind wants to, but it's what's going to happen. I think there's a level of apathy in the mix, and I think that the apathy is another symptom of trauma. I think that there's a lot of different expressions of trauma happening in this community. One is someone has been so unseen, so unloved, that once they have this map that tells them who they are, they defend it vehemently. And it's like argumentative. Defensiveness is the hallmark of the not self. So, you know, it is what it is, and that's a part of their path, but they might need a little guidance on getting beyond defending their design. Another trauma is not being out of touch with your power. And so then, you know, they discover human design, and they're encouraged to sit back and wait, and it works really easily for them because they haven't been able to do anything anyway because they're so estranged from their power. So at some point they need to figure out when life is actually compelling them to do something, because surrender isn't passive. We're meant to be on the stage of life, involved, doing whatever we're supposed to be doing, but with awareness, rather than lost in it, rather than taking it personally. And I think that I see a lot of people trying to live the passenger, and that looks like passivity. No, the passenger is in action. It's a place within yourself. It's an orientation. It's a way of relating with your experience in action on the stage of life. It doesn't mean checking out. It doesn't mean being apathetic. So I think that's there's this malaise that I kind of see. I think there's tons of trauma in this community, and I think someone needs to call attention to it. You know, it's just in the world. I mean, human design's no unique example. It's just in the world, everywhere. All right, that is my heresy.
I need to clear the pathway for you, or you good?
Does anyone have any questions?
What's your Facebook group that you're
It's,
are we invited?
oh, well, I have one now. It's the solar plexus binary community. So if you have 5th or 6th tone cognition.
Oh,
But I
okay.
think I have been feeling into starting one for people really sincerely in the experiment.
Yeah.
Really what I'm craving is 9-centered communication, which means it's not like, you know, shutting people down, telling them they're wrong. It's like being able to witness and experience and take in what they're sharing, you know?
Sure you're not a front face?
What's that?
So you sure you're not a front face?
I
I'm just
have no idea.
I know.
Are you going to heretically be selective about who you let in? Because, you know,
You're in, Fran. You're in.
I'm not talking about me. I'm just saying a group like that could fill
Or
up really fast with lots
who's
of...
got the defense channels?
Yeah. I mean, of course,
I
I would be selective, but I mean, it's not. It's just a feeling you get from people, whether they're, you know, are you lost in defensiveness in the information, or are you
Yeah.
How do you suss that out?
honestly? It's. I think there's just something you can tell. It's not about any perfection. It's just about, do you have an honest relationship with yourself? And because if you have an honest relationship with yourself and you can accept yourself, then you can be honest and with other people.
It's just a limitation of Facebook because people...
It is, yeah.
How do you even know where
Yeah.
they're coming from? You just have to do this every month.
Well, with practice online dating, you can actually tell. So I think it's the same.
That's true. I mean,
That's
you know,
right, it's true.
energy transmits through the internet, right? I mean, something about the aura transmits, so I don't know.
Something does, yeah. All right, I'm going to stop the recording.
So you can get to the real stuff?
Yeah, what's the after dark stuff?